One of the really interesting things about the history of Fleetwood Mac is not just how long their road to success was, but how difficult their road to success was. Now, this was not a band that built on one success after another until they reached that great lofty height. Rather, this was a band that for many, many years really struggled. They put out 15 albums prior to their masterpiece, Rumors, and many of those 15 albums, if you've ever had the chance to listen to them, are terrible. They're really not good at all, right? And in fact, halfway through the band's rise to greatness, their leader, the genius who starts the band, the guy who wrote all of their songs, who was the centerpiece of that whole organization, quits and joins a German cult, right? Peter Green leaves. Right? This was a band that went through an awful lot, right? And yet they still somehow managed to achieve a great deal at the end. Now that suggests to me something a little bit paradoxical, and that is that their success was not based on success, but rather their success was based on failure. Right? Now that is a really important distinction that psychologists have been talking about for years. They talk about the difference between two kinds of learning strategies. One kind of learning strategy they call a capitalization strategy. And that's about building on your successes. You grow up in a wealthy home, you go to the very best schools, you get a chance to work at a great company like Turkcell, you go on to greatness in your life, right? One success after another, building on, all the way up. That's one way of learning. But there's another learning strategy that psychologists call a compensation strategy. And that's a strategy where that's learning based not on building on strengths, but on overcoming weaknesses. And one of the most crucial observations about psychologists is that compensation strategies based on overcoming weaknesses, are a lot more difficult and a lot more rare, but they are in the end a far more powerful way of learning than capitalization strategies. Let me give you an example of this phenomenon. And it's an example from American football. I know that very few of you in this room will be fans of American football, but I'm going to explain it so well you don't need to be. I'm teasing. American football, the most important player on an American football team is the quarterback. He's the man who handles the ball the most. He's the one who makes all the decisions. He's the captain of the team. And professional football teams in America select their quarterbacks from all of the college football teams, from all of the hundreds of colleges around the country that play football. And they look for the very best college quarterbacks, and they pay them enormous amounts of money and invite them to join the professional leagues. Right? Well, a couple of years ago, a very clever economist decided to look at the question of what was the relationship between how good a quarterback you were in college and how good a quarterback you were in professional football. Right? And what he found was something very puzzling, that the best college quarterbacks weren't the ones who did best in the professional ranks. In fact, the opposite seemed to be true. That quarterbacks who were mediocre in college were the ones who did really well at the professional level, and the ones who did really well in college were the ones who didn't succeed nearly as well at the professional level. Now that's crazy. If you think about it, logically it makes no sense. The very best college football quarterbacks are the tallest, the strongest, the most skilled. They're the ones who have had the best coaching. They're the ones who have been given the greatest encouragement. They're the ones who have put together the most impressive statistics. They're the ones who have the strongest arms, they're the most accurate throwing the ball. They have every conceivable advantage that you can imagine anyone having before joining the ranks of professional football. And yet, they seem to underperform when they get to that top level. Right? Now, how can that be? Right? How is it that people who aren't nearly as strong, who aren't as tall, who don't have as good statistics, who don't come from such good programs, who haven't been coached so well, who haven't been encouraged so much, how can it be that these people, these mediocre players at the college level do much better than the stars when they come to the pros? Well, I think it's an example of compensation. That what's happening with those players who aren't so talented and who aren't so gifted is that when it comes to the greater challenge of playing professional football, they try harder and they're hungrier and they work longer hours and they desire success more than the ones who have been coddled all of their lives. And at the end of the day, what it means to be a successful quarterback at the professional level has more to do with desire and hard work and hunger than it has to do with talent or encouragement or gaudy statistics when you were in college. When it comes to quarterbacks, in other words, a compensation strategy is a much more valuable preparation than a capitalization strategy.